Chapter 6: Human Suffering and the Stars. Every time I flew to the meeting place, I was amazed at the diversity of nature that continued to gather. You only had to look across the forest-kissing ocean to know that the creative source of the universe was magnificent. Only something so great, so inspiring could give birth to all these living forms on the planet, which included waterfalls, valleys, rivers, cliffs, and mountains. All of it, really. I was excited about today. We had asked Corey to come on a night when every available star in the sky in the Milky Way would show themselves to the human. It was they that would tell the story today, the story that would provide an understanding to the root of all suffering in humans. But that joy dissipated at a speed of lightning bolt as I arrived at the forest that met ocean, tucked away in a large bay behind a formidable cliff. There was something amiss, and I could feel it. A great sadness made its way through me and buried all my other emotions. Normally there was chatter and laughter, but today there was silence and sadness that pervaded everything down to the tiny leaves that sprouted from the trees. I landed on Baobab and began to listen to the story Lion was telling. He sat at the edge of ocean, facing sun as earth rose to set, with the forest on one side and ocean on the other. Wind ran its current through his exotic mane as he bowed his head slightly, devoid of the energy he needed to hold it up. In the wind, we all tasted and smelt his pain. I came here and left my pride behind, he started. I needed to understand the evil in the human, to find a way to make peace and understand their actions. I was hoping to learn that they were not inherently evil, and therefore give birth to hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance they would stop killing us. Do they not know we have a soul as well? You only have to watch our young when they are born. The personalities in each are so diverse. Each bearing the same genes, born of the same parents in the same plains of Africa, yet every cub is different, manifesting a different consciousness. We too are living souls on a journey that feel pain, joy, happiness, and suffering. Last night they arrived in a pickup truck full of humans with rifles and placed a leg of meat on a tree. Of course, we did not know that humans had done this, as we do not hold such thoughts. The females in the pride just smelt meat. They were hungry. They have been for a while, as the land we hunt on has become smaller and smaller. More of it has been taken up to feed the human population that seems to have no limits, like their appetite for eating food beyond what they need to survive. Two in the pride went out searching for the source of the smell. One was pregnant with a cub from the pride. Our choice is always to hunt for our food. It is the way of our life. However, stress, hunting, poaching, lack of water is slowly killing us all off. In the beginnings of the human, we respected them. They hunted on foot and the fight was fair. They killed just to meet their needs and to survive, as we all do. Then something changed and we became a sport, a trophy. Parts to be used to increase vitality and fight off death. And why? For reasons based on illusions, ignorance, and the ego? When the females found the meat and climbed upon the tree, they shot both, ripped their skin off, threw away the baby, and left what they did not need on the earth. They did not eat them or use them to save a life, but instead they took their skins and heads to place on their walls or to walk on. I could feel his heart constrict and the pain sear through his cells and his soul. His systems began to shut down as his body moved into stress. We all felt his pain. Humans did not understand that they created stress in us that had the power to kill us, just as it did them. Lion continued. I don't understand the human. They are always seeking to cheat death and prolong life as if they value life, but yet they hold no value of life at all. They kill their own. They kill us for pleasure, for money, for sex, for power. That is not valuing life. In fact, it is their complete lack of value for life that leads them to behave as they do. Did you know, he whispered, to no one and to everyone, they raise us in cages for the sole purpose of hunting us. Why? Because it makes them feel like men? It gives them power? It fills their ego? Do they not know we all, from cow to rhino to tree, bleed, wilt, and wither just as they do? That we have a soul, a vibration, that we are alive just like them? Are there any among us whose death looks pretty, happy, and vibrant? Do your leaves and flowers not lose their color, your limbs their luster? Do we not go gray and get old? Have you ever seen humans keep a house full of dying plants? Do they not understand that we too experience emotions as humans do, but that we still feel them? You humans, roared Lion out into the world, have removed yourself from nature as if you are somehow above it. You've become lazy in your desire for food and shelter and wanting it to arrive without hunting for it or building it. You have even wanted your companion to arrive over an app rather than go out and court one. In doing so, you have disabled the part of you that gave you purpose, meaning, and connection to the world in which you lived. But that yearning to create, kill, hunt, and gather remains in you. So what do? You kill each other, hunt us for pleasure, and enslave yourself to money to meet your survival needs. And in doing so, you have lost your connection to all of nature and your purpose. You have lost the value of your food as you no longer have to work in the field or go out and hunt, making it easier for you to eat excessively. As you no longer must build your homes, chop wood, you keep cutting us away, building bigger and bigger homes. Have you lost the value of life as you are no longer connected to it? I did not want to be the one to tell you this, but when you lost your connection to all of us, many of you moved from being survivalists that lived in balance with your surroundings to unknown murderers. And how easy it has been for you to kill us every day in your ignorant yet convenient illusion that we have no soul, or that we are not connected to you. Money and technology have given you the freedom to disconnect from life and from the consequences of your behaviors, which is why you kill every day and feel no remorse at all. How often do you thank your food, the water you drink, the air you breathe, the earth you walk on? Would you be so quick to kill if you had to chop the wood for your chair? If you had to hunt us on foot with a spear? If you had to harvest the field for your food? If you had to court and work for every act of procreation as we do in nature? Would you kill us if you stopped blocking us out and hurt us? Believe it when I say your peace, sanity, and joy lies not in ignoring us, but in connecting with us, in sitting with us and listening rather than sitting in us and trying to describe the experience to yourself. We allowed Lion the space to move through his suffering, each of us sending him love and light. As we all sat in silence, none of us had seen Corey enter the cove. That is, until we saw him go down on his knees and place his hand on Lion's back. He bowed forward and laid his head beside his hand. I'm so sorry for what we have done to you. I feel your suffering every day. In my job, I am confronted with the evil in humans, so I too have asked myself over and over again if humans are evil beings. I have lived with these blinders, such as those put on for horses, for so long I cannot remember a time when I did not see humans as evil beings. Because of that, I've seen the world in one way. I've limited what I've put in my mind to ideas and thoughts that support my beliefs. Therefore, my experience of the planet and its living beings have been filled with so much negativity and fear. I am learning here that what I feed my mind, the filters and blinders I wear, become the sum total of my experiences in my life. It's like going to an amusement park and only after riding the same ride because fear stops me from getting off my ride and onto another that is unfamiliar. As a result, my whole life looks like different versions of the same ride. The people change, the speed, the time, but the ride remains the same. I know you think we are evil, and until I met you, so did I. Please may you find it in your lion's heart to forgive us. We have lost our way because we do not understand ourselves or love ourselves. We are forever seeking out our worth in such actions as killing, cheating, stealing, and relationships. You know, A wise eagle once told me that the best way I can protect you and change the world is by changing myself. She told me that when I struggle with change, to remind myself to stay on the path of change not for myself, but for those I love, because my change will radiate out in the world and touch all those that I love like the ripples created by a stone thrown into a pond. Lion, by coming here I've stepped on the path of self-awareness and change not only for me but for you, all of you, as well as for my sons, my parents, and all those I hold in my heart. The lion slowly turned around and rubbed his mane across Corey's head. Thank you. I needed to see the heart and kindness of the human and to be reminded of it. There are those among you who dedicate their entire lives to saving us from their own species. And of course, I forgive your kind. The soul in me has taught me that besides gratitude, there is enormous power in forgiveness. Forgiveness is about freeing myself from the burden of suffering and you as well. To hold anger, resentment, and hatred is only to hurt myself. The seeds of such thoughts planted within me and watered grow into trees, and I will see the world in this way. As a result, this is what the world will give back to me. With that, the lion raised himself on his hind legs and wrapped his front legs around Corey to give him the most enormous hug. In all my life as an eagle, I never thought I would witness such an exchange of love and empathy between a human and an animal as large as the lion. The magic of yoga never ceased to create surprise and wonder within me. Now, I think it's time for your lesson, and it is a lesson I think will help us both today, spoke Lion, as he slowly raised his enormous body and stood beside Corey, who was dwarfed beside him. They smiled at each other, and together they walked towards Baobab after Corey took a moment to take in the growth of oceanic lives that had arrived. He was beginning to see how important this discipline was to the survival of the planet and all that lived on it. Well, more for those that lived on it, because with or without us, the planet would survive and rejuvenate itself. It would be us that would disappear. As he walked towards the tree, he looked up at me, and for a moment it was just us. I felt the warmth of his love wash over me, and in it I found freedom, not bondage and vulnerability as most humans did. Hello, Corey. I speak for all of us when I say that it's nice to see you again. Thank you, he replied. I am deeply grateful that I am able to be here. He placed his palms together and we ommed to reconnect all of us to each other and to the universe within each of us. As the silence connected us to the collective energy, sun disappeared, and what filled the void left behind was a sparkle that filled the entire sky. All the colors of the universe reflected in the Milky Way. There were deep pinks that blended into soft purples, strong blues, and gentle oranges, each merging into the other, such that you were not completely sure where one stopped and the other began. For a moment, every single being in every energetic form looked upwards, mesmerized by the beauty that the universe had painted across the sky. We did not just see it, we felt the life within it and the promise of enlightenment. The whole sky radiated love through our skin and into every core, into the very core of our souls, where it then slowly spread to every corner of our being, into our limbs, branches, petals, leaves, waves, and flippers. We could hear it sing a song so powerful and filled with so much light that it stole our breath away. Then it put it back into us and expanded it beyond our physical being, such that our breathing touched the sky, and in the space between the exhale and the inhale, we all transformed into love and light. At that moment, we all knew that we were deeply loved, that when our forms disintegrated, our souls would merge back into the brilliance of the universal consciousness. And this is what it would feel like. A love so strong that it could not be contained in our physical forms. Good evening, sang Sky. It is wonderful to see all of you looking up instead of down. At this, all the stars laughed and the colors quivered. We could not help but laugh with them. Human, we especially welcome you. The whole sky seemed to bend, for a collective respect for this human was growing as they read his soul and felt his heart. In return, we all raised our arms, limbs, branches, waves, wings, flippers, and trunks to the sky and opened our hearts to what lay around us. Beautiful, came down the voice that seemed to come from everywhere above, from the stars, the colors, the blackness. Now, I shall ask you all to lay on your backs. Yes, the trees and the plants as well. I know that flexibility lies within each of you. You are all yogis. What we are about to tell you is the root of all human suffering, and we do not want to add neck pain to that list. For some minutes, all that was heard was the sound of our forms as we made our way onto earth. As our bodies merged with Earth's and we felt its body envelop us into a hug, and in our collective shavasana, our heartbeat slowed. Our muscles relaxed, and we became one with everything. Slowly spread your legs, your flippers, your wings, and your arms so your palms are facing upwards. Move your shoulders away from your ears where they are always gravitating towards. Tuck your chin in towards your chest to align your spine and roll your shoulders in a little to protect your back. Human, if you have back pain, as so many of your kind do, you can also bend your knees, make your feet wide, and let your knees touch. Now just breathe. And with each exhale, allow your body to sink into earth and your heart to open to me who lies above you. And so it began. When you were last here, you learnt about the mind and all the impressions that lie, sit, and squat in it. Colored impressions that rise to the top of the oceanic mind and ripple outward. These colorings are called kleshas. Think of them as a collection of coloring pencils that color all your stored impressions. In the yogic discipline, there are 5 types of coloring, or kleshas, that you humans engage in with your impressions. For the most part, these colored impressions create mental anguish and emotional suffering. From Sanskrit, klesha translates as obstacles, affliction, pain, and distress. Now, remember the bed of the oceanic mind, the chitta, where all your impressions sit? Well, some of those impressions are neutral and hold no power over you. They sit as a harmless memory. Some of them once had coloring, but through meditation you have learned to remove the colorings and bring them back to neutral by burning the seeds from which they rose. But for many of you humans, your impressions remain colored and give rise to tendency towards action, satisfying karmas, or creating new karmas. More often than not, these colorings result in an undesirable consequence and suffering. Corey, remember that most impressions remain hidden in your subconscious. Rarely do they arise in your dreams or waking state. When triggered, the natural movement of chitta shifts them, and some will rise into your consciousness waking state. It is only when they rise into this state are you then able to witness the coloring of your impressions and the influence they have over your behaviors. These colorings distort your reality as they influence your perspective of the world around you. So often you end up perceiving a non-truth as a truth. Remember, human, your reality, the way you see and interact with the world, is all in your mind. Think of the world and life as a large blank screen, perception as the projector, and your mind as the content reel. The contents of your mind are constantly being influenced by 5 types of coloring. The first one, from which all the others rise, is known as avidya, which translates into English as ignorance. Avidya is the foundation from which all the other colorings manifest at different levels. Avidya occurs when you humans take a transient object to be everlasting, what is impure to be pure, and what is misery as happiness. It never ceases to amaze all of us up here that humans take stress, suffering, and misery as happiness. Tell me, Corey, how many of humans do you know say they are happy? Many, right? Yet, when you listen to them, you hear that they live in stress with their jobs, they have misery in their relationships, and they suffer in their transactions with the world. They have somehow mistaken misery for happiness. In the yogic discipline, what is meant by avidya is the deep-seated belief that what is not the self is the self. In other words, the ignorance of the profound truth that the only permanence in the universe is the universal consciousness that resides in every living being as the soul, which is the true self. And yet humans continue to attach themselves and their belief in who they are to all that is impermanent, because they believe that what is impermanent, transient, and ever-changing, such as the body, the mind, people, relationships, thoughts, emotions, and objects, are permanent. "Are you understanding this, Corey?" asked the stars, the twinkle of which I could see reflected in his eyes. Corey lay on the earth with Lion on one side, me on the other, Baobab at his feet, ocean above his head, and ripples of nature around him. "Yes, thank you, I do." "Please go on. I'm excited to know the remaining roots that give rise to the suffering that seems to plague me." The second klesha, which rises from the first, is asmita, which translates into I amness or ego. It is the sense of individuality that is created by its identification with the mind-body complex. This is slightly different from amkara, the ego spoken of in the relationship to the mind. This ego is the I maker that takes that identification and extends it by attaching it to such things as gender, occupation, country, roles, etc. In this klesha, humans create a false identity with the seer, which is with that with which it is seeing. Because of the ignorance of reality, namely avidya, the human associates itself with the limited body-mind complex, sense organs, sense perceptions, and intellect. This gives rise to the self-centered complex known to you humans as the ego. Because you attach who you are to these elements, you view yourself as a limited being. Additionally, you see yourself as separate from the universe, in which you exist and which created you and resides within you, as well as from all other living beings, of not only your own species, but all other species. I am separate from the universe. I am not a part of nature. I am separate from you, and so forth. The human does not understand that all is one. They do not understand this because of avidya, ignorance of the true self. In this state of I-ness, you begin to have likes and dislikes, which take us into the next two kleshas. Just then, the sky exploded into a firework of shooting stars, and collective "ah" rose from the ground. "You like that, don't you?" smiled the Milky Way. "It has made you feel all warm and magical inside, has it not?" We all nodded at the same time, creating a mirage of movement as the energy in all of us followed our physical forms. "Now," continued the Milky Way, "the next time someone asks you if you like shooting stars, your human mind will dive into its memory bank to this experience, and you will most likely say, 'Yes, I like shooting stars,' thus creating an impression of like in your subconscious to shooting stars and attaching that to your identity. This is the third klesha, raga, or attachment to your desires, and the most dominant being happiness. When you see yourselves as I, separate from all, you begin to be pulled towards objects, people, places, and things that give you pleasure. Let me try and explain this another way. Let's say, human, that you meet a girl, and when you are with her, she makes you feel happy and joyous. In time, you begin to attach your happiness to this person and believe that they are the source of your happiness. When this happens, you begin to fear losing that happiness, so you begin to cling to that person and move into insecurity, anxiety, and fear. But you just don't do this with the girl. You do this with all things that provide you a momentary, fleeting, or longer-term feeling of happiness. Then you add an I to these likes, and voila! You have now attached your identity to that external person, place, object. For example, my girlfriend, my car, my home. When you engage in this klesha, you hop on the merry-go-round of emotions. When desires of likes are fulfilled, you suffer because you fear losing that which you believed has created happiness in you. When you lose it, you suffer because you attached yourself and your happiness to it. Only in connecting with your true self do you begin to understand that the source of constant contentment does not come from anything external to you, but exists within you and in your openness with everything. The fourth klesha is the other side of the coin known to raga, known as dvesha, which translates into English as aversion. This is the coloring of disliking things wrongly by avoiding things that make you unhappy. This is based on the false presumption that once again, things external to you are creating pain and suffering in you. Human. Let's say over time that girl you liked, you now dislike. Same girl, same reality, but now where there was once like, there is now dislike. She is not changed. What has changed is the coloring in your mind. If she hurt you, you may even go a step further and attach pain to love, thereby coloring the tree of love with dvesha. In doing so, your mind will now seek to avoid love because it has been colored with the feelings of unworthiness, jealousy, insecurity, and so forth. Because in humans, anything that threatens the I or the ego is avoided. This is sad, really, because just imagine how much of the world you are missing out on. How many infinite possibilities and opportunities you have closed yourself off from liking and disliking things wrongly, out of your misunderstanding that all these likes and dislikes are you, rather than creations of your mind. I like this because it makes me feel good. I don't like this because it makes me angry. It is not the object that creates the like or dislike, because then everyone that meets the object, person, place, or thing would have the same reaction. Remember the tire and how it is your mind that creates the coloring. Now ponder on this. Just like the suffering attached to raga, most of you humans spend the other half of your life suffering when you are unable to avoid a dislike or subjected to a dislike. Corey, when you re-enter your world, sit in awareness of how many of your actions and behaviors sit in one of these four following categories. Seeking to get that which you desire, seeking to avoid that which you don't desire, suffering when you don't succeed in obtaining what you desire, suffering when you fail to avoid that which you have an aversion to. For each of these states, there are a vast number of emotional reactions that include pain, jealousy, insecurity, and joy. In fact, nearly every emotional response that runs through you daily is in relationship to one of these four scenarios. There are other reasons for emotions, but we will get to that later. Before we move into the last klesha, why don't you all take a little stretch? Corey rolled to the side to protect his back and then rose to a seated position and turned to me. I was grateful for the shadows that protected the change in my color from laying beside the human. Yes, nature. Rise and move your wonderful forms, returning blood to all the areas that have been deprived of oxygen from the flow of blood pumped by your muscles. In the shadow, it seemed as if earth were rising, then bending into a forward fold, stretching into a long dog, elongating its spine into a plank, and then releasing her back as she lay down and lifted her chest off the ground. From here, earth seemed to transform into a mountain as she moved into down dog, then slowly moved forward to rise like the trees that were grounded into her, and then up to a standing position. Earth then seemed to fold back into a forward fold, into a squat, and then slowly back down to a place of feeling rejuvenated. And now, sky continued, we've arrived at our last klesha, abhinivisha, the fear of death based in the false belief that you are a limited being attached to your body-mind complex, such that when it dies, so shall you. For this reason, you humans fear change because change leads to the loss of things you have attached your identity to, the largest being your body. As a result, you are constantly trying to control all that is beyond your control and transient with apps, medicine, stem cell replacements, chemotherapy, anti-aging tablets, Botox. You know the list. Alas, you are back to ignorance. It is this constant fear of death that prevents so many of you humans from living life. Instead of living your life, which is only ever the moment you are in, you are constantly seeking ways to preserve the life you are not living. At this point, Sky and all her playmates took an enormous inhale and expanded themselves. On the exhale, their colors grew brighter and we felt a warm breeze sweep over all of us. Corey, it is a result of all these glaciers that humans spend a vast amount of their lives in a reactive state to the world around them instead of a responsive state. You are always seeking to satisfy or avoid a desire from a place of ignorance. I could feel Corey beginning to feel overwhelmed by the knowledge he'd been given today, mostly because he did not know what to do with it. He felt as if he were being handed all the parts of an IKEA object without the instructional manual. I knew if I could feel it, then Sky could as well, so I waited. Now, human, I know the knowledge we have passed on today is enormous and can feel a little overwhelming, but be patient. As we move forward into the 8 limbs of yoga, we will begin to hand you the tools to uncolor your impressions, as well as the tools to move through all the layers of the natural human form, such that you may eventually connect to your pure consciousness. On the path, teachers will enter your life to help you along. It is a path that requires guidance and teachers depending on how far along the path you want to travel. But for now, know that what we do seek to do here in these magical meetings is for you to begin to understand yourself and to give you the tools and guidance to gently move you off the path of suffering and onto the path of enlightenment. Corey, I know you must wonder what God, universal consciousness, could create a form that endures so much suffering. We will go more deeply into that as we move along, but for now, please understand that suffering is important for humans. Only in suffering are the flames of desire to seek one's true self fanned. Only through suffering and pain is the soul purified. When you suffer, you become aware of where you are stuck, aware of the actions and habits you keep repeating over and over again, and aware of the lessons that need to be learned and the negative karmas that need to be broken. To do all this, you must first have awareness of all of the above, and then from there shed your attachments to the human form and purify your mind. It is for this reason you humans must seek out change that makes you feel uncomfortable, so that you can clearly observe your mind, observing your behaviors, reactions, responses, words, and thoughts towards people or events that challenge you. As you continue up the path of yoga, uncomfortable situations and your reactions and responses to them will allow you to see how far you have involuted towards your soul. The more change does not faze you, does not create suffering you, the less fear you have toward it, the more peacefully you move through it, indicates you have moved closer to living your life from your soul and not from your mind. Now, please allow us to bid you good night and show our gratitude for your presence and openness today. This knowledge can only be conferred to those that are open to it as you are. In the next moment, every single star in the Milky Way lit up, smiled down upon us, and collectively embraced us with their subtle electricity. An electric current moved through us, sparking an awareness of our own vibrating energy. We all slowly rolled to our sides and up to a seated position, and from there we came onto all fours and rolled up vertebra by vertebra until we were upright again. We were alive. I turned to Corey. Thank you from all of us. We hope that you will return at the next full moon. I would love to never leave. He stared deep into my eyes, and I knew he meant not only this place with all its wonders, but also me. The minute I step into your world, there are no judgments, no fears, no insecurities. The layers fall away and my soul shines forth. We all smiled at the subtle shift in his language, and then we ommed to bring us all back into one with the universe within each of us. Corey, let me fly you back. We all bid farewell. We bid all the nature farewell, and then sauntered back in the direction from whence we had come. Wow. That was incredible, he sang as he smiled up at me, the smile that melted my heart every single time. Then he looked up at me, perched on his shoulder. I missed you. I missed you as well. It is hard to stay present when you keep pulling my mind into the future, he confessed the thoughts that saddened me as well. I understood today the impermanence of this relationship, but I also understood that if I can reach that connection to you with my soul, then we will be one forever. He blushed. I knew it had taken an enormous amount of effort for him to speak his truth without fear of it being rejected. Then he continued, "It is my greatest hope that one day I will transcend into a form where I may experience you as well." I laughed out loud. "In time, human, all will happen as it is meant to be. But first I want to plant a seed in that handsome head of yours. As you move through your days, begin to be aware of your colorings and the influence they hold on how you interact with the world. Every human has a story, and thus every action that rises from them is the result of a conditioning and a coloring that has been planted into them from the time they were born, or in some cases well before by their ancestors, or by the karmas and samskaras that form from former incarnations. Have compassion for your enemy, Corey. They, like you, are a product of their mind. They too are broken, and they too have a soul that is connected to yours. Seek to know their stories so you may understand them better. The stories of those around you are important to help you understand their colorings and the basis of their ignorance. But it is also important for you to share your story so others may understand the foundation of your actions and behaviors. And in all this awareness, the source of your colorings, you will understand that there is never a need to engage in negative emotions, anger, annoyance, jealousy, etc. You will understand that deep and honest communication with yourself and with others will alleviate the need to engage in such emotions as you learn to live above them. Let me end with this. Humans are masters of creating stories in their heads, of believing they know what the other is thinking. This amazes all of us. The human does not understand their own mind or brain. How can they understand another's? The basis of most conflict and suffering in your world rises from a place of misunderstanding and poor communication. Therefore, Corey, if ever you begin to create a story in your mind about me, please stop. Instead, the next time we meet, ask me, and I will answer your questions from a place of self-awareness. Until then, ask yourself why you created that story. A story that is often one of suffering or of fantasy. Why is it you chose that narrative, the narrative you did? We had reached the place where our duality began to manifest, and here we paused for a moment. As I let that seed sink into the bottom of his subconscious, I knew it was time for words to stop, so we spoke with our eyes and our energy. There was nothing left to say as what we really sought from the other was faith. I gently rubbed my head against his as he lay his hand on my wings. I then lifted off him and into the sky before I gave myself a heart attack from being so close to him. I gently hovered for a moment and watched him walk away into the world that so strongly separated itself from the rest of us.